Penguin Random House Canada presents The Ghost Garden, Inside the Lives of Schizophrenia's Feared and Forgotten, by Susan Doherty. Read for you by Paula Kaye. If I can stop one heart from breaking, I shall not live in vain. If I can ease one life the aching, or cool one pain, or help one fainting robin unto his nest again, I shall not live in vain. Emily Dickinson. Introduction. An invitation to the Ghost Garden. I did not intend to write a book about people who live with schizophrenia, but in October 2009, a door opened in front of me and I unexpectedly found myself face to face with a group of highly misunderstood souls. The door was to an elevator that required a special key to gain access. It carried me up to a locked ward. I'd never gone anywhere in the hospital where the doors shut tight behind me. My legs were a little shaky and my heart was thumping as I stepped off the elevator into a hallway where listless men and women in various states of undress regarded me with suspicious eyes. Grooming was non-existent. Their slippers whispered to the linoleum as they shuffled along, many in flapping hospital gowns murmuring to themselves. I was there as a new volunteer to meet a woman I'll call Camilla. Her doctor described her background to me only as troubled. I wore a zebra print cotton dress, and as it turned out, on that day, Camilla was wearing a zebra print cotton top. She gave me the once-over as she came towards me, a penetrating gaze that seemed to burn a hole right through to my core. But we became friends that afternoon, and we remained friends until the hour of her death, a relationship that altered us both. Months before that first trip to a locked ward for the extremely mentally ill, I had come to this hospital, the Douglas Institute, to do research for a novel set in 1930s Montreal that touched on the era's heartbreaking psychiatric practices. I spent many hours in the library and archive department, where I watched a vintage black and white movie of a patient undergoing shock therapy. I saw photos of a terrified woman with strips of cloth jammed into her ears to block unwanted voices. I read the case histories of people who'd been dropped off at the hospital by their families and never reclaimed. The hospital was so candid and transparent about historical treatment options that after I was done with my research, I wanted to reciprocate their generosity in some way. So I offered my time as a volunteer. If I'm honest, what I'd seen in the archive and on the hospital grounds also weighed on my conscience. It was clear that people were still being cast off, shunted aside, even shunned, and I wanted to help. John Matheson, a priest who headed the volunteer department, interviewed me for more than 3 hours. He asked me 100 questions, none of which seemed to have any relevance to mental illness. We talked about whales of all things. Then I had to pass a police check. After all that, I assumed I would be tasked with filing documents or some such clerical chore, maybe working at the foundation or a reception desk. Instead, Matheson asked me to befriend Camilla. I said okay, though I admit I was not only frightened but also unsure whether I was up to the job. She lived on a ward for the chronically mentally ill. But somehow Camilla and I came together as two people. She taught me that having even a single friend is not a given when your mind has been claimed by a psychotic disorder. She taught me about shame, addiction, sexual abuse, homelessness, and the true meaning of condescension. She didn't use words to articulate those themes. Rather, I saw her plight with my own eyes. People with schizophrenia often live far outside the boundary of acceptance. I was not given a laundry list of what was wrong with Camilla, nor a description of a past that would define her today or limit her tomorrows. The days and weeks and years after I met her honed my understanding of schizophrenia, and led me to advocate on behalf of those who were unable to do so for themselves. That first friendship led to another, and soon I was transfixed by the lives of the marginalized and forsaken. My ability, if you can call it that, to connect with people who have been pushed to society's margins made me long to gather and communicate their stories. And then, in the middle of all these extraordinary encounters, a dear friend from elementary school asked me if I would write the life story of her sister, a woman who has struggled with severe mental illness for decades. Caroline Evans, not her real name, is now in her 60s and has cycled in and out of hospitals and group homes looking to be cured for 30 years. She has never been able to elude schizophrenia. It's an edgeless, unknowable, looping odyssey, which no one drug or treatment regimen will fix. To the burden of the person already suffering from voices in their head and other horrors, add stigma, isolation, and marginalization. The easy path was to view Caroline as an incurable, obese, crazy lady, but I couldn't stop thinking that at one time she had been just like me. In all the most important ways, she still is. Her experiences have become the spine of this book. I first met Caroline in 1967 when she was in grade 4, over 50 years ago. She was a bubbly, white-blonde 9-year-old with an infectious laugh, who showed no hint of what was in store. At the age of 21, something changed within her brain, and she began to experience violent sexual hallucinations, delusions, and paranoia. Caroline herself also wanted me to tell her story in order to tease out, if I could, the reasons why she has had grave difficulty maintaining recovery, and to present a set of circumstances that might be familiar to and have meaning for others. The mistakes that were made in Caroline's life and treatment are lessons for family members who find themselves drawn unwitting and unwilling into the chaos of mental illness. Since 2011, I have had hundreds of phone conversations with Caroline as she has crawled back into the darkest corners of her memory, places she thought were either inaccessible or best left undisturbed. I probed. She answered. We have laughed and we have cried over the telling of her life, but it's her honesty that has driven the writing. And the text, as a result, is scattered with her thoughts, frank reflections on a tattered life and the hard lessons she has learned. Intermingled with Caroline's story are 18 vignettes of the men and women who have also spoken to me of their deepest desires, unmet longings, and unimaginable hurts. For some, I am their only friend. The loneliness I have witnessed is beyond the beyond. What began for me as a weekly volunteer commitment has transformed into a need to shed light on the truth of debilitating mental illness, to prove that hope exists. Without this first-hand experience, I would not have been able to understand the hurdles of a misunderstood condition that still deeply frightens us as a society, even as we seem to grow more comfortable talking about depression and anxiety. Without my friendships, I would not have been able to do justice to Caroline's story or articulate the tangled nuances of psychosis that plague the people I write about. I've changed all the names and some identifying details, but the stories in this book have been sanctioned by those who have suffered, be it patient or family member. I have not changed the names of the doctors and health professionals I quote for their insights into both Caroline's long history and the treatment of schizophrenia in general. I didn't set out to do this, but I have inadvertently created a forum that allowed the psychologically afflicted, medicated or self-medicated, the walking wounded, to voice their truths. Those who are ignored and stepped around on the streets, the homeless who cycle in and out of wards and through rooming houses, are hardly seen as human and are left to wander in a ghost garden, an interior haven where emotional pain can be suppressed. Along with Caroline and my other friends, The heroes of this book are Caroline's sister.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?